who earned some of his income in Michigan, some of it in Kentucky. So we declared him as a resident of Kentucky because he was here more than 6 months, and we actually got all that credits back into here. And we have a simple relationship. After-tax yield is equal to pre-tax yield times 1 minus tax rate. That would be your marginal tax rate. Well, it varies from people to people. For example, if I bought such a bond in my Roth IRA, that probably is not a smart idea because by definition, any earnings I have on Roth IRA are not subject to taxation. So I should have bought it in my regular account. But I can buy a U.S. Treasury in my Roth IRA because any income that I get from that is not subject to taxation. You also need to be careful about that a little bit. If you're just starting it, even if you're already 59 and a half, if it has not been more than 5 years since you started it, any earnings you have are subject to taxation. You can withdraw your original contribution anytime you want, but the earnings you have to wait for that 5 years to pass. And luckily, they start the 5 year on the January 1st of the first contribution you make. For example, I maxed out my 23 and 24 on the first of this year, but it starts counting from January 23. So by December 27, my 5 years will be up. I don't plan to withdraw, but just in case. We can do an exercise here. Suppose these are also affectionately known as the munis. Muni bond yields 4%, and treasury bond yields 5%. Your marginal tax rate is 30%. Which one should you buy? That's a loaded question, but for now, assume that there is no difference in default probabilities. Assume both of them are not going to default, which is not a foregone conclusion. Back in early 70s, the city of New York defaulted on their bonds. Remember, federal government has power to issue money. States don't. They can only increase taxes, but people have to be living there to pay those taxes. So which one you should buy? The muni gives you 4, the treasury gives you 5, but you're not gonna get all that 5. Your after tax on the treasury is 5% times 1 minus 30%, and that's actually 3.5%. So the nominal, the before tax rate you get is 5, but once you pay the taxes on it, you're going to get less than the munis. That kind of makes the munis rather popular for people who have a lot of money that they cannot put into tax-free environments. They're not going to pay taxes on it. Yes, Martha.
I was wondering what was in the granting fee.
One minus tax rate.
Tax rate.
Yeah. But the trouble is, muni bonds are not subject to, are not free from default. In fact, they get their own rating. But just to give you a rough idea about where they trade these days, if I go to rates and bonds on Bloomberg, and I'm hoping Google is going to understand that, and it did. And that never happens with Bing. US, for example, current 30-year treasuries yield about 437. 30-year municipalities yield about 371. Okay, sounds low, but that depends upon your tax rate. But they also have a kind of, default probability. So you need to think about those. All right. Now let's talk about how the bonds actually work in the market. There is no organized bond market, just like the stock market. If you want to buy a share of NVIDIA, it's listed in NASDAQ. Yes, you do it through Robinhood and stuff, but they give the orders to the market. Yes, I give you these PDFs. Right?
You're gonna have to write them later.
For the bonds, everything is so-called over-the-counter. As an individual, you go to your bank or your financial institution and you ask them, can I please buy a US Treasury bond that matures on January 25, 2045? I say, go ahead and buy it. But these days, individuals don't do that much. But, institutions, a bank can trade with another bank in bonds. It's called over the counter because in the old days, these transactions were literally done over the bank counter. But now you do it through a electronic communication system. Reuters has one, Bloomberg has one. I'm Chase, and I contact Morgan Stanley. I say, I'm interested in what your price would be for $1 million face value, uh, January 2051 bond. And they say, here's my bid on offer. Bid means it is the price they're willing to buy at. Offer is, or the ask is, it is the price they're willing to sell at. If you like the price and you want to buy, you say mine. That means you buy at the ask price. If you want to sell it to them, you say yours. You sell it to them at their bid. Okay? I've done a lot of this thing. In fact, these transactions happen so quickly, you can easily buy and sell $100 million face value within seconds. And you guys actually think that you started all those abbreviations on texting? No, a lot of that stuff actually started with the bond traders because time is of essence. So you short stuff. Instead of saying, yes, I am buying at that price, you literally say mine. Okay. And the system immediately sends a printed page to your back office. They know exactly what's going to happen. The bond transactions typically settle in T+1 next business day. So next business day, if I bought it, I'm going to my institution is going to send the money. They're going to send me the bond, electronic record of it. We don't have not much bearer bonds anymore. You actually don't get the bond certificates that you may have seen in movies. Those are called bearer bonds. Bearer bonds, if they have coupons or if they mature, the bank that does the settlement for the bond is supposed to pay the person who actually has the physical ownership of the bond. If I had a bearer bond and I lost it and Martha found it, And she said, okay, it's a good time to get my revenge. She goes to the bank and she can actually collect it, even though it was mine. But the other kinds that go registered bonds, there's nothing she can do. Even if you had a physical bond, a lot of times people ask it for sentimental purposes. Just like stocks, you can actually ask for a physical stock certificate. And she takes it to the bank and says, this ain't yours. It is registered to Dr. Esser. And you'll probably get arrested at a minimum. And years ago, I asked, there was a question like that in an exam, fill in the blank. And I asked, Amy's going along the street, found a bond lying on the street, took the bond, went to the bank and got paid, or clipped a coupon. Uh, in the old days, you actually clipped that coupon, took it to the bank, they paid you the coupon, and got paid. What kind of bond she found? The answer is a bearer bond, otherwise she couldn't have been paid.